Welcome back to another episode of the Seezoned Crew. We've been doing the series where we've been telling you what it takes to build an AI chatbot. The first week, we took it from a product perspective with Nader Dager. The second week, we did it from a data perspective with Dimitri. And today, we're doing it from a design perspective with our senior product design lead, Hussain. Hussain, welcome to the show.
Hey guys.
How's everything going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been with Seez and what you usually do for the company?
So I've been with Seez for 4 years now. It's the longest company that I have been at, so it's a proud moment. I take care of mostly all of the designs that we do. I work with you in marketing, but I also work on the product side, keeping our product and marketing aligned throughout in whatever we do on the product side and how we shape that on a marketing side. So yeah.
I mean, Hussain has been working on all of our products, right? Everything from Seez Click, Seez Pad, the buying
Seez,
journey.
yeah.
How's that experience been so far? And then transitioning into what our most recent products have been like.
In a short answer, it's been fun.
Okay.
But at the same time, there's so much growth and learning that happens every single day that I go along. Because that's the thing that I tell anyone who joins Seez, that no 2 days are the same. Every day there is a new challenge. Every day you're solving something new. And kind of building Seez Pad, Seez Click was very different from what we've been doing now, kind of building Seezar. It's in Seez Pad, Seez Click, you focus more on what the dealers need, what the customer's gonna see, and there's a lot more complex data that goes into and simplifying that complex data for a dealer to understand it at a glance and not really spend so much time figuring out what the numbers mean, what do I need to click at, all those things. Whereas Seezar is simpler when it comes to a customer facing side. So you don't really have so much complex data that's going into it and that you need to simplify, but you still need to kind of make the UI and the user experience so clean that the user can actually focus on just answering questions that he has.
That's very interesting. So what were the primary considerations when you were designing Seezar to make it both intuitive and visually engaging? I know it's very different than trying to simplify a lot of data.
Yeah.
This is already relatively a simpler platform, but what were those considerations, I think, early on to still make it visually appealing and engaging? I think we also had a couple of challenges early on where we wanted people to engage with it more, to make it a little bit more prominent, right?
Yeah.
So what considerations did you take during that process?
So when we started designing Seezar, we were coming off from designing dashboards, right? And then it was like, okay, we have so much less data and so much more room to do things. So we had to go back, kind of redesign all the components that we had built before to make them kind of more minimal. Because what people have kind of experienced with chatbots is very hit or miss, like the old chatbots that we had before, where you would ask the chatbot something, but the response would be very generic. And you usually see a chatbot in a very confined space on the website. And when designing it, we're like, what if we make Seezar take up the whole screen? Because that's what you want the user to do. You want them to kind of be immersed in asking questions, getting answers. And we wanted to focus more on how the text was formatted, how Seezar replied, and how much room we left in terms of minimalism for the customer, the user, to just look at the text and nothing else. And even the components that we built for Seezar are super simplified. They'd have less data, so you can focus more on okay, I like this car.
Yeah.
Can I get more details? So it's more engaging, kind of, without you even realizing that the customer has to ask another question to get more info.
I think it's very interesting. We talk about what is traditionally a chatbot. We try to position Seezar now. We're trying to change the terminology even in the marketing team to it's a virtual assistant. Because a traditional chatbot is the decision tree model. We've talked about this in some previous episodes if you're interested in going back and hearing more about it. But we've transitioned from that decision tree model where, okay, if this question comes in, that answer comes out, to now it's more all encompassing, right? So it has a lot more that it can do. And so it kind of replaces the need, like what we're seeing is a trend going towards chats replacing some of the websites, right?
Exactly.
Because what happens is all of the information that you usually get from multiple sources, now you can get from one place. So you can ask it about comparisons, you can ask it about the different car types, and then you can actually shop for the car, and then you can actually go through that process, compare cars, etc. Whereas before you need multiple different websites to do this, now you can do it all in one place. So it makes sense, right? To be able to put it all in one place.
Exactly. Before it was just you would ask the chatbot because you wanted some information that you couldn't find on the website. What we are trying to shift the whole kind of industry is like the chatbot can do everything for you. You don't really need to go look at 20 different pages to get the same info.
100%.
The chatbot does it for you. And that is where you take the complex information of those 20 pages and you simplify it down so the customer just focuses on one thing and engages more in that way.
Very interesting. So how did, like, what were the design principles or like the core design changes that you had to do for this chatbot that's differing or different than our other traditional, or not traditional UI UX? I think we were already very advanced when we had SeezClick and SeezPad. But like that is one type where you're simplifying information. There's a lot on the dashboard. What are the design principles you had to follow to come up with something much simpler for the chatbot?
Like SeezPad, SeezClick, you follow the conventional design principles that's been there for in the industry for so many years, right? Your usability is on point. You simplify the information. You hide complex information behind menus for people. Like additional steps require additional clicks. But Seezar, we had to throw all of that away and kind of rethink, because when we started doing Seezar, there weren't that many chatbots that existed in the industry at that point. There was ChatGPT, but ChatGPT's whole kind of perspective is that you are in the ChatGPT application or on the website. You don't really move in and out. Exactly. But we had to combine, okay, you are on a website, but you're still using Seezar. And what we found out is, one, that we needed to focus a lot more on error handling, because it's still it was still being developed, right? The whole LLM space was growing, AI space was growing. So we had to kind of put in guardrails where a user knew that, okay, Seezar couldn't answer this or something else was wrong. So we had a lot more error handling to focus on. That usually kind of, on a conventional dashboard, it's like a snack bar that comes in or an alert that pops in like, hey, something failed. But you can't really do that. Seezar has to tell you this. So we had to build that into our kind of user experience principle. But also at the same time, when you speak to Seezar, you need to know what Seezar is doing to give you more confidence. So we had to build in like the thought process that Seezar is going in. Is it thinking? Is it asking for car cards? Is it looking through the inventory of the dealer? What is Seezar doing was the biggest like user experience principle that we had to follow. So now if you go on Seezar and you search for something, you'll know exactly what steps Seezar is taking to get you that answer.
Say I'm fetching images.
Exactly.
I'm searching through inventory.
I'm comparing cars, and then you get a comparison table. So you know what Seezar is doing, because you can't really see things happening. At least on a conventional space, when you click something, you know what's going to happen. Or you predict it. With Seezar, it's generating stuff, so you don't really know
it's so open-ended, right? So it could be anything.
Exactly.
So it's good to give that clarity.
Exactly. So we had to bring that clarity in it, plus kind of go with the whole idea, because it's more of Seezar gets used by different dealerships, right? So we had to kind of tone down the identity of what a chat window was to keep it so minimal that it could be shaped into different dealers' website. It takes on the skin and it can be customized. That is not something that you really see with dashboards. You still have the identity of the company that designed it. But with chatbots, you want it to almost feel natural with the website because it lives there. So that was something we had to build in with the whole customizability aspect.
Very interesting. And I think we'll come to more about customizability in a bit. I think like there's always a challenge, and this is something that both of us approach together in terms of like, okay, now we have this new product.
Yeah.
How are we going to design a logo for it? How are we going to brand it? How are we going to make it similar to what we have so that people can still relate? What are we going to name it, etc.? Can you take me a little bit of like what the inspiration was for the logo, how we worked on it to come up with it, etc.?
So, as you know, like CSPAT, CSClick, C's itself follows kind of a pattern when it comes to all the logos that we have. But then this was kind of a whole industry shift. If you look at it, you know, we were going from like SaaS to the whole AI space, and we wanted to reflect that into Seezar. But even before Seezar came about, we had before when Seez had an app in the Play Store and App Store, we had an AI bot that would negotiate on you. Seezar. And I think Nader's mentioned this in his podcast. His name was also Seezar, right? But we didn't want to reuse the same word. So we had to kind of play with our identity where we still have Seez, but then we added AR, you know? So it became Seezar, and it brought back kind of a homage to the first chatbot we ever built. But in terms of how visually the brand came about, is we wanted to show our users and dealers that they can trust on Seezar, right? And when you look at color psychology, green plays a big role in kind of building trust, right? It's open-ended, it's more welcoming as a customer when you see it. Even though you don't realize it, like colors play a big role in how you perceive things, right? And also kind of you wanted to leverage what WhatsApp's done and how many users trust it to kind of take a hint or kind of pick up on WhatsApp's brand and use that in R, but kind of shift it so it's more vibrant. It shows the latest and greatest technology. And that's how Seezar came about. If you look at it, the green.
We can say there's a lot of like chat apps that have green.
And there's a reasoning for that green, right? Because it welcomes you in. Because chatting is such
it becomes familiar, right?
Exactly. Chatting is such a personal thing that you do on a day-to-day basis, right? Your friends, your families, you chat with them, and it's your space. And we wanted to kind of make Seezar have the same familiar aspect, where it's a safe space that you can ask it. You're not really gonna, you know, go in the wrong direction or be sidetracked. And the logo has kind of an indication to waveforms, and it's kind of one of the features that will soon come to Seezar, right? Yeah. Where Seezar will actually have a voice. And we wanted to indicate that as like a future feature that we're bringing in, but early on. So yeah.
I mean, first of all, I'd like to just clarify. Some people call it Seezar. It's Seezar.
Seezar. It's based on the Roman Caesar, Julius Caesar.
Julius Caesar as well. Like you could, it's like phonetically sounds the same.
I don't know if you've mentioned the new brand refresh that we did.
No, I haven't.
No?
But if you want, you can give it a little tease.
So going back to like the whole Roman Empire, we kind of did a brand refresh right now. You guys will see it soon. Hopefully by the time this podcast is live, new website, new brand refresh should be live. But we take a lot of inspiration from how the Roman colors were and how they used in different hierarchy in the plans that will come on Seezar. We indicate these with the Roman colors, and it's super cool. I am really proud of the refresh
even
we did.
How our packages are structured and what the different packages are. Yeah, there's this like new Roman, which makes sense, right?
The Roman purple that you're wearing.
Why do you think I wore purple today? Why do you think I wore
I'm wearing
purple
green
today?
pants to represent Seezar, but I just realized,
lots of purple.
They're not seen.
Yeah, lots of purple in Seezar's recent developments.
I know.
I could say
we had purple for Nitro, but we kind of took a twist on that for Seezar now.
Yeah,
to indicate 100%. More royalty and market leadership.
Yeah, interesting. So obviously this sits on a lot of different platforms, a lot of different dealer websites. Lots of them have very different designs. How do we make sure that each caters to that? Like, how do we make it customizable so that it fits in with everyone's different like identities and brands, but still is consistent across all of these different platforms?
I want to give a big shout out to the dev team that we have, because I am usually like a sore thumb, in the whole process where I want certain things to happen a certain way, and I really pressure them into doing them, and they actually come through with them. But going back, each dealer, as you said, has different websites, and we need to kind of adapt to them. And the way we built customization into Seezar is we didn't want to have a dealer set 5 different colors on Seezar for different things, right? What we kind of figured out is the less, not freedom, but less options that you give a user, it's easier for them to use.
To make a choice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that goes with iPhone and Androids, and the two things that I
whole-
dabble most of the time in. But it wasn't about giving them less choice, but it was about simplifying their process. So when you customize Seezar, all you need to do is really put one primary color that your website uses. Seezar UI will figure out where it needs to add opacity. User messages are the ones that are highlighted. Seezar has more room. So we kind of approached that in a way where you just have 3 or 4 options that you customize, and Seezar kind of takes care of the rest of the thing. And that's a lot of back-end logic, front-end logic that we put in, where, you add in a purple. Different parts of Seezar will represent that purple in different ways to accommodate, not really ruin the chat experience, but highlight the chat experience. And even when it comes to kind of, a lot of websites have different kind of border radiuses that makes it look really different. And that is one of the customizations that we allow in Seezar, whereas, if everything is more squared off on your website, everything about Seezar becomes squared off, from the way the chat bubbles look like to where the input field looks like. So we kind of combined a lot of customization into 4 different settings that you really play with, and it adapts to a dealer's website.
Very interesting. And what would you say was the most challenging part of all of this so far in developing the design of this product, and the UI UX for it?
I think there were 2 biggest things that I see and that we faced when developing Seezar is the colors and the customization. There's a lot of logic that it holds, and to kind of link them to different things, and for one color to do a lot takes a lot of effort in terms of development, where even the slightest mistake can, ruin the whole chat experience that a user's having. So kind of we had to build a lot of safeguard rails. We had to look at how does this color affect the chat window? What if someone comes in and puts like a light yellow as their primary color on a white background? That doesn't really work well. So we had to put in safeguards where even if you put in a light yellow that is your primary color, we will work the opacity in such a way that your text is still visible. The text changes color on top of the yellow. So a user will never have an accessibility issue where it's like, oh, I can't read what Seezar is telling me. And the other thing that we faced, at least when designing Seezar, was how the components look like. And I think I mentioned this previously, but we couldn't use the same components that we built for a buying journey, click, right? We couldn't use the same comparison table because Seezar is so responsive. It can go full screen, it can go into a tiny window.
And you can use it on mobile.
Exactly. So we had to rebuild all of these components with less dense information, so that when you go in and you look at Seezar, you just look at, okay, this is the car, that's the price, and that's the model. If you want more information, we obviously hide it behind an additional click, or you can ask Seezar to show you more information. And that's, kind of how the information comes about, instead of just packing the whole screen with information. Because you have the whole chat going on, plus we show you complex components throughout the chat to guide you through different things. But it was kind of finding the right balance when to show those components and when Seezar just replies to you without kind of giving you additional information. I think the word that we use most of the time is the intention.
Okay.
Intent analysis, kind of what are you asking Seezar to do?
Yeah.
And what do we show you based on that?
I think that's like super needed nowadays, right? So we don't want to bombard people with too much information.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that they're getting the information that they ask for, and then if they prompt for more information, it is easily accessible. And yeah, with like a very smart virtual assistant, you can ask it. It will give you the additional information.
Exactly.
Right? So you don't need to bombard them with everything.
No.
You don't need to put it on a website because it's based off of a question. It's contextual.
Because again, designing for a user versus a dealer is very different. A dealer needs to and wants to see all the complex information.
Yeah.
A user just wants to finish task A to B. He wants to get his information right and he wants to get there as quick as possible. So, I think even a lot of times when a user is looking at websites or browsing for cars, when you kind of really pack the website with a lot of information, it distracts them from the goal that they came on the website for.
Yeah.
Like a lot of users, and again, it goes both ways, where a lot of users, like you love cars, right?
I love cars.
When a website's packed with dense information, for you, it's fine. You understand that. A lot of times, like for me, I always put myself in a user's perspective where it's like, if I'm buying a car, I just want to know quick specs about the car. And then once I'm sure, I will get into the details, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the approach Seezar goes with.
I think what's really interesting is, and I think we've talked about this in a lot of our different segments, is like prioritization of the dealer versus the customer.
Yeah.
And the challenges between trying to cater to both. I think at the end of the day, and I've said this before, is that the dealer does care about the customer.
Yeah.
So like there is an alignment there. But where do you see the differences usually lie? What challenges do you see between like, okay, what the dealer is asking for versus what the customer actually needs to see, right? Because a dealer might want to push more information like you were saying. Or one, I think, very quick example that we mentioned, I think on Nader's, is like how much they prioritize actual lead gen versus actually giving the information.
Yeah.
Like, what did you see in terms of like balance between dealer and customer? Where do we lie, and what have we been doing to basically cater to both?
So I think the biggest strength that we have is we do a lot of user testing and we gather a lot of feedback. So we know in a way what the user wants.
Okay.
But I think the biggest challenge that we have is kind of aligning what the dealer wants to what the user needs, right? It's kind of a fine line where you make the dealer happy, but you also look after the user, right? Because at the end of the day, the dealer is our customer. So we have to kind of cater to both the sides. But when it comes to kind of what requests do both of them give and how can we kind of merge them, it's what we like to do is kind of do the user test, gather all the issues or difficulties that the user's facing while navigating Seezar, and we then kind of go back and we see where, like, is whatever the dealer's saying kind of align with what the user's seeing, right? It's a big difference. A dealer checks Seezar almost every day or tests different things that we usually push out new features. A dealer's testing, so they kind of get familiar with Seezar. But a user, it's his first time a lot of the times, right? It's like, oh, there's Seezar, let me talk to it. So when you get a user who has like first time feedback, that is kind of the purest form of feedback that you can get. But what we like to do is design both the options, what the dealer wants, what the user sees. And then we kind of, what we're trying to do now is A/B test new features. But what we like to do is go back to the drawing board, see where they both align. Because usually there is a lot of truth to what the dealer's saying in what features they want or what they think the users need, and seeing how the user behaves. So a lot of times we kind of design wireframes for what the dealer's feedback that they gave us, and then we user test with the actual users that use Seezar, but on a prototype level to see how they feel about this. And if we see that it actually improves their user experience, we kind of developed that feature and we prioritize that feature.
So like, what can you give me an example of like a mistake that you felt we did, or you like a UX or a design mistake that you felt we did because of like from the feedback that we got, like there was poor user experience, or what feedback we got where we felt like, okay, maybe we should do something a little bit differently.
So the way right now when you go on Seezar, what we figured out is a lot of times the users don't really want to type the message, right? They want even what they need to ask kind of be automatically generated.
Okay.
So like the new feature that we are kind of working in the background is like quick replies or quick suggestions, smart suggestions, as I think Microsoft calls them, is to kind of increase engagement but decrease the whole point of a user really going in and typing a long message that when we can automatically predict that. It was something that the dealer brought up, right? That we want the users
Less
to be...
of a mistake, more of an optimization.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say we don't do any mistakes.
No, we do.
We do.
But
I
we
think,
learn,
yeah, exactly. We adapt quickly from those mistakes, so they don't really feel like mistakes. I think that's what Seezar taught me. Like, they're never mistakes, but they're more opportunity for growth.
Yeah, or improvement.
Exactly.
I mean, I think from my perspective, a lot of when we were talking to dealers about it early on, and some of the, not mistakes again, like maybe challenges, where like, okay, how do we get it to be more engaging? But then also, because dealers want, obviously people to talk to it more, etc. They want to get value out of it. But also you don't want to be too overwhelming to the customer. So you need to find a place where, okay, it's there.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is different dealers also have very different preferences for how present they want it to be.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So we actually added customization options, right? For
pop-up messages. That was something I think we learned also, that we kind of launched that feature.
Where it moves.
Exactly. We added a bunch of animations. So quick, I think as soon as you land, we had a pop-up message that Seezar would send you. And a lot of dealers didn't want that. A lot of dealers wanted the Seezar to be kind of, it's there when you need it, but it's not really in your face.
Yeah, and other
dealers wanted it more prominent than even what we developed, right? So it's kind of finding the right balance and then building a feature to accommodate that.
Yeah,
and learning from it.
Even one of the other challenges that we had early on is, and we see this sometimes with ChatGPT or with some of the other LLM models, where when you open the interface, you get a list of questions.
Yeah.
You click on a question, and that kind of starts the conversation. We see that as good for engagement.
Yeah.
But some people then don't realize that you can type a question.
Exactly.
Right? So how do we balance that, right?
So we are in the middle of doing user testing for that. So how can we make your interaction with the chatbot, with Seezar, more engaging, right? And we kind of started the same way as ChatGPT, right? You have like 3 quick questions. But then a lot of times what we realize, the customer doesn't realize that, hey, you can type, as you said. So now we're kind of going back and rethinking, okay, what if we make the input more prominent? And instead of the suggested questions being on top and part of the first message, all you see is an input field, and then you get the suggested questions, right?
Yeah.
So that your first interaction with Seezar should be you asking Seezar to do something for you, or asking a bit of information that you don't really get on the website. Because going back, Seezar has a lot of information that you don't even see on the website.
And people don't know that they can ask for this information, right? So I think we've seen a lot of cases where like, wow, there's so much more that people can be asking, but people are still like in the traditional chatbot mindset where we're not a virtual assistant or an LLM model that has access to so much information. They ask like simpler questions just because they think it can't answer.
That was kind of the biggest, I would say, challenge to change also, is like people had such bad experience with different chatbots that took a lot of time for people to trust Seezar. Like, it's not going to do the same things as the other chatbots. It's going to answer you in a lot better optimized way that, not a normal conventional workflow chatbot can. right?
And I think like a part of the whole AI discussion in terms of like how much do you humanize it? I
Exactly.
think different dealers also give it a name, you know what I mean? So that they feel like they're talking to a person.
Exactly.
Because it can reply in such a way.
I think that was another feature that we launched, right?
Yeah.
The kind of making Seezar more human. So when a customer lands on a website, you don't really see it's a chatbot, but it's a human talking. And then it kind of, I think it increases the engagement that a user has just because they see a human face there on the website. Like, oh, let me go talk to the person there and see what information I can get.
Very interesting. So I think in not just in Seezar,
Yeah.
but like across Seas, we always have this from even a design perspective, or mostly from a design perspective. We like to be maybe a balance of fun, friendly, but not cross the line into like unprofessional or something along those lines. So like, how do we find that balance? I think from my perspective, we're risk takers. You know, we'll take a risk. We'll see how it goes. But like from your design perspective, how do you see it?
I think at least when it comes to the marketing side, we do calculated risk.
Okay.
We know where the limit is.
Okay.
And
sometimes we push a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. It's not going to break the limit, right? You're just pushing. And I think that helps push the limit of what we can do.
Yeah.
Even on like the product design side, a lot of times you see a lot of patterns that we call in design. They are, even when you move from a dashboard to the AI space, the chatbot space, they remain the same. And I think what we are trying to do with Seezar is kind of break those patterns, because that's when best design really happens, when you know the rules, but you break them. But you break them in a way where you know that it's gonna work, because you use the strength of familiarity, I think, and then you go on and you kind of push the boundaries there.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, I think the biggest thing that we saw was, from a Seezar's perspective, is that when we launched, we used more emojis than we use now. And I think we kind of scaled back a little bit to make it less LLM and more humanized.
Yeah.
I think as humans, we use emojis, but we use them in a very specific way.
Yeah.
And we had to teach Seezar that, like, hey, you can use an emoji here. This is playful, but first you need to provide the information, then you can be playful.
I think what's really interesting is like one of our core values, and you might see them on our mug here. We have code on our mug, and D stands for differentiation or being different, right? So I think that's it, right? Part of being different is breaking the mold a little bit, pushing the boundaries, and seeing. And I think there is already a trend in things being a little bit more direct, or things being a little bit more fun. There is more risk being taken, and not just from that perspective, but overall, how do we stay ahead of the trend from a design perspective on the products that we have? Are there any practices that you would recommend people to do? Like, from my perspective, it's be different. Like, keep trying to break things and see where the limits are. Sometimes the established limit changes, and it's evolving. So you don't get too comfortable with where that limit is. Break it sometimes and see what happens. But from a design perspective, I always tell my team as well, like, we have to be on top of the trends, right? So what do you guys do to make sure that we're always ahead of the curve, we're current, we're effective, etc.?
So there's a lot of research and kind of referencing existing products that exist in the market. Looking at ChatGPT, like, they have a history also of breaking the conventional design pattern. So they are a great source of inspiration, but then also keeping up with all the other LLM and AI chatbots that come up. We keep referencing them. We have a whole library with screenshots of different chatbots, how they look, how they work, what each one does differently. So we take inspiration from all of those, but we have a rule in the design team, at least, is if we do a design, there's two variations of it. One's always the one that pushes the boundary, and one that it will work, right? It's the safe space. We have a discussion. A lot of times we bring certain elements from the one that had, broken the boundaries, and we kind of bring it to the safe space. So you're still pushing the limit, but you're not really going out there. And it's like when someone lands and it's like, okay, this doesn't look anything that I'm familiar with. So I think that's kind of the balance that we do every single day. And I think I have a tendency of pushing it a really bit too far. And a lot of time Andrew is the one that pulls me back, or Nader. It's like, okay, we can't really do this right now, but it's a good option. So we have a library kind of filled with different references that we have. And I think a lot of times, a lot of the inspiration comes, I don't know, like what I like to do when I have a little bit of time is sit on X or Twitter. I still call it Twitter.
Most people do.
Yeah.
Very good.
I sit on there. There's a really great design community. People are a lot more engaging. You see a lot of these ideas that are kind of just prototypes, right? But they're good reference points for you to be like, okay, what if I just take this and I tweak it slightly for Seezar? How would it work? And that kind of just questioning everything that you see keeps pushing you to kind of improve every single day. I think in the last 4 years, I have questioned every single thing that I've done. And I think that helps more than going and kind of just being in a loop of constantly just looking at stuff, and then just starting to design a lot of times helps you push the boundary. Because I don't know if you feel that in marketing, you just need to do it sometimes.
Yeah.
And then it gets done.
No, I agree 100%. I think it's always very important to actually hit the finish line and just do it. But I think it's a very smart approach. One is to always keep your eyes on the market, take a look at what's happening, and then always have like maybe 2 different options, one that is safer and one that actually tries to break some boundaries, etc. And then finding a mix of which ones work.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's my biggest advice, is always have 2 variations, even though you might never use it, but it's there. You broke a boundary. It kind of helps you grow as a designer.
Agreed.
And gives you kind of a boost in your design personality.
So we do have a new segment that we want to try today. We're always, like we were saying, is always trying to be different, try new things, break the boundaries a little bit. We're calling it Q&A Drive-By. That might be okay. Do you want to pick up a question for us, Hussain?
Let's see. Blue's my favorite color. If you could turn any activity into an Olympic sport, what would you win a gold medal in? I think that would be switching phones.
Yeah. I agree.
You guys.
We talk about this all the time at the office. Is if you want to see what the latest tech is, look at what Hussain is carrying as a phone.
There's something about tech that inspires me, and I want to tinker around. So I think I would win a gold medal in switching phones. I switch almost every month or every week now. Yeah.
What are you on right now?
Samsung S25.
Okay. So you always get a part of the Apple ecosystem and a part of the Samsung.
Yeah.
You make comparisons every year.
Yeah. I mean, again, they're pushing boundaries every year, right? So I'm like, okay, what does this do different to what I already have? Or it's sometimes the whole kind of being an iPhone user and then going to Android makes you realize what the differences are. And I think also as just a design perspective, because both have such different design principles, it helps kind of seeing the other side.
100%. As a designer, we'd love to make sure that we have that.
Exactly. Do I pick another one, or do you want to pick another one? I'm going to include you in this.
I'll pick one. I'll take pink because it's similar. It's purple. If you could make an office rule that everyone had to follow for a day, what would it be? Interesting.
Ooh.
I'm a gamer,
Yeah.
so that's the first thing my mind went to, is you have to play a game
LAN
for like
party.
15 minutes. I mean, if we could do a LAN party, I would definitely take it. Or at least a game. Any game for 10 to 15 minutes a day for that day.
I think this was
like-
before you joined, Seez.
Yeah.
But we played Civilization
As a LAN party at the office.
at the office. And then I think it got a little bit too complicated.
Yeah.
We moved to Among Us. You see the big difference, how we switched. But Among Us was really fun. We were all on a Zoom call, a few of us in the office, and then yeah, I think that day we broke a lot of trust.
Yeah. We have a lot of gamers
Yeah.
at the office, and me and Hussein are two of them.
But I get called on games to kind of yeah, they laugh at me because I can't really coordinate jumps or complex movements. It's super funny for people who are
You're
like
just being different,
yeah,
Hussein. You're just
I
being
know.
different. It's all good.
Okay, I'll pick the green one. Let's see. If you could take one prop from any movie set, what would it be? Ooh. I'm
I
gonna
take
go.
the Iron Man suit, dude. Hands down.
Oh, I wanted that, but then I, I think I would go for uh, the Fast and Furious movies
Ooh.
because I know you like
You
cars.
one-upped me.
Yeah,
Yeah, some
you
of those
took
cars
Iron
are
Man's
pretty
my
sick.
favorite hero,
Yeah.
and then you took it, so I'm gonna take the Fast and Furious cars, the one that Vin Diesel drives.
Sick.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you guys for having me.
Always a pleasure, Hussein. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please do like, subscribe, comment. We love to hear more about your thoughts about these episodes. I think in the future, what we're trying to do is also bring in a couple of guests.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of guest speakers that we have lined up to join us. Some might be a little bit bigger, some might be a little bit smaller, like a bigger group or a smaller group. But yeah, we're very looking forward to more episodes of the Seezoned Crew. Thanks again for joining us. Thank you, Hussein, and have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Take care.
guys.
Bye.